That was scary. To be around when technology is at a point like it is now and still just moving in these incredible rates, why not embrace that? Take advantage of it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Just like Molly and I just got another car. Now, we didn't have the money to buy we got a Lexus. Her brother sells them, so we know when a good one is coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we still get a pretty decent price. The point I tried to make to her was she was happy with the one she had, 6, 7 years old. I said, why don't we take advantage of the incredible technology within the automotive world right now? You know, that's really hit an amazing point. And stuff that's been going on for the last 2 or 3 years is really breakthrough. We can get a car 3 years old and we will be more advanced in a technological way driving than we've ever been. And we are. I mean, the car is just loaded with stuff, mostly for safety features.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I mean, everything has something going on within the world of technology that is really advanced. And why not go for it? Makes your life more fun.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's like mine and Brian's thought behind this is that, you know, we see that in the technology space that a lot of these people, you know, are back office workers initially when they start, and they kind of don't have the tactful skills of being personable, being able to talk with other people, being able to lead other individuals. So the kind of our idea behind this podcast is, you know, talking to interesting people about different topics, probably how they learn or how they manage relationships. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know you're a photographer, so you instantly, as soon as you have a subject in front, you've got to build a rapport with them to get them comfortable, to get them to kind of open up so that they're not, you know, like that in front of a picture, you know?
No, that's the key to a good portrait session, is you have to build that spirit of trust immediately. And it's hard because sometimes I'm in a situation people here, they know who I am. So I have an advantage. That's Tom. He's a nice guy. You'll have fun. He's very easy with you. He's a good guy. But sometimes I walk into a situation like photographing a CEO or somebody way up in upper management, and you know the first thing they ask me is, "How long is this going to take?" And I want to say, you know, well,
30 minutes longer than you have.
Yeah, because you're being such a jerk right now. It's going to take a while, extra time, to get you to settle down and open up so that we can actually get a photo that you're going to be happy with. Mm-hmm. And I can't say that. So I kind of tell him in a way what he wants to hear. I say, well, it'll be quick, yeah, but you have to work with me, you know, and you have to believe in me, and you have to trust me. And I try to establish right away that I'm more concerned about getting a really good picture of that person rather than me getting a good picture for me. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you convince somebody that you care about them, in some ways more than you care about what you're doing, that is a very, very critical moment. In sales, no matter anything, anytime you have any interaction with somebody, the way you build that trust is that you got to show them that you care about them. There's this great line. It was said a long time ago, and it kind of just disappeared. Now it's kind of starting to resonate again. Teddy Roosevelt said it like in the early 1900s. But nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
It's a very good quote.
It's a great quote. I say it to myself a lot, and I remind myself. You know, there's this saying, Markham McKnight, you know, he told me when I talked to his group, he said, you know, my guys have this saying we call show up and throw up. And another great line. And he says, I got to get them. You know, I want you to tell them, like, what is it like to be there within a relationship when you meet somebody for the first time and you've got to win them over. You know, what do? You know, well, you don't start talking about yourself right away. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys do. Hey, this is what I got. You know, they realize they have 15 minutes with this guy. By the way, we got a lot of new products. Look at this. What do you think of that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, you seen the pictures of the kids? Yeah, I got a brand new granddaughter. Blah 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 blah. As opposed to, is that your granddaughter? Wow, she's beautiful. What's her name? Oh, her name is Betty Lou. Ah, I love Betty Lou. That's great. I had an aunt named, you know. You know what I mean? I'm just spontaneous.
Yeah, you're talking
Yeah, no,
about,
no,
you're talking about the power of engagement versus just the cursory. We've got to have, the obligatory chit chat at the front end because that's what's socially accepted. You're talking about actually getting into committing yourself.
Yeah, committing yourself and winning that person over. I mean, I'm not saying anything that is profound and something that, I discovered this new way of communicating with people. I mean, this is it. This has been going on for ever since people have been able to talk to each other. There was one guy that originally figured, why don't I ask him about him? We're learning this thing called language.
Yeah.
Me want to know how you are. Oh, me good. Okay, we established that. I mean, when you think about it, we've been communicating for a long time, but somehow when I was doing all the rock and roll and all the album covers, maybe it was in the DNA. My dad was in sales, but I developed a way of approaching different artists with this thing that I've been talking about. It's about them. There were guys that would say, hey, when am I going to do your album cover? Don't forget to call me. I want to do your album. Hey, man, I want to do your album cover. Yeah, far out. You're awesome, right? Whereas my approach was like, if you find yourself in need of somebody that can help you, and if I could help you make your album cover something that will make you feel better about yourself and your band and the way that album cover looks, and possibly increase incentive sales and make you more money, then maybe I can help you. I never said, can I always left it in their court.
Mm-hmm.
If I can help you sometime, you can give me a call. It's up to you. Your call. I'll be there for you if you call me. You know that. Because I believe in you. And I believe in your music. And I'm paraphrasing. I didn't say maybe those exact words. But I said it heartfelt. And I got a lot of work done. Because it was real.
Yeah.
And I had some great relationships with people. So in many ways, sure, it was an opportunity for me to do something big. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I wanted to do something for them.
I think that would be a good place for us to just have Tom back up and do a little bit of a bio on himself, because we've been wanting to capture that with all of our guests. Is that where
yeah, so Tom, if you just, in a nutshell, I mean, I know you've done lots of things, but for people who don't know who Tom O'Neill is, can you just give us who Tom O'Neill is in a nutshell?
Well, I gave a talk last August, and that's probably another thing I should say. I do a keynote talk on my rock and roll career. It was late 60s, early 70s, and it's been quite popular. But I get introduced now as Tom Gundelfinger O'Neill. And people are a little bit confused, because a lot of people know me. You guys met me and know me as Tom O'Neill, but...
I do know the Gundelfinger, though. Yeah.
You didn't know that? Or
no, I do. I do know that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you know that now. Yeah, but there are a number of people that go, "What's the Gundelfinger?" And so I sometimes have to say it. In fact, so when I spoke to this group, there at the Lawrence Livermore lab, I had a huge auditorium with great auditoriums. I mean, it was packed with rocket scientists and physicists and all that. And so I totally improv, and I said, well, first of all, let me tell you that if you Google Tom O'Neill, you'll get this guy with all these photographs. And then if you Google Tom Gundelfinger, you'll get this other guy with a whole different set of photographs and a whole different life. So I looked at him and I said, basically, you're looking at somebody with a split personality. And I really don't know who I am until now. In fact, let's go to 1967. That means I'm Tom Gundelfinger. Summer of Love, Monterey Pop. And this was all improv, and I got a laugh out of it, and I segued right into it. And I did a quick little blurb as to what the name I was born with, because all the album cover credits are under Tom Gundelfinger. So when I started to do this talking, and enough time had gone by after I'd gotten married and changed my name. So when I married Molly O'Neill, and she had a prettier name, so she won that game.
Much easier to spell, right?
Gundelfinger O'Neill, Molly O'Neill, Tom Gundelfinger. I always said my name sounded like a cardboard box falling down a flight of stairs, So I didn't want to bring kids into the world going through what I went through, so I became Tom O'Neill, and we have Dugan O'Neill and Casey O'Neill. The cat is even named Danny O'Neill. So it's if he was Danny O'Neill Gundlefinger, his initials would be dog, and that's not good for a cat. Anyway, so he's Danny O'Neill. But so I finally figured out how to use this dual name thing. Mm-hmm. And since the rock and roll thing has gotten really popular over the last several years, I've just joined the names again. But now I have another career. You guys know about the fact that, for the listening audience, I should say, I appeared in a Sprint commercial. I feel like I have to talk to them like they're hey guys.
Wave at them, Tom. Wave at them.
Hi, everybody.
Okay.
How are you out there? I'm
Doing
now
great.
looking at the mic rather than these two good-looking guys. Anyway, so...
well, that's debatable. That's debatable.
So because I was in this Sprint commercial, that aired all over the place. There was a lot of popularity over it, and or a lot of notoriety, whatever you want to call it. But out of it, I got an agent, and I'm going to do more work. And they've signed me, but I had to come up with another name, because there's the photographer dude, and then there's the rock and roll dude, and now the actor. So I'm Tom G. O'Neill. So Tom's Gundlefinger, rock and roll guy,
and already a Tom O'Neill in the SAG, right? So
no, I
really,
no, I researched it. I did not. Well, wow. There's Ryan O'Neill and Tatum O'Neill, but oddly enough, that name has not been given to too many actors. So there was a guy named Tom Neal back in the 40s, but the way I spell my name, E-A-L. There's not a lot of confusion. So Ryan O'Neill would be the biggest, and of course Shaquille O'Neal, somebody like that, distant cousin, but I can't jump.
You're just
like
a little bit shorter, right?
Yeah, much shorter. So I just took, and I've used Tom G. O'Neill over the. So I was trying to think, and the Oscar goes to Tom G. O'Neill, and I thought, yeah, good. There's a little bit of a pause between the two different, the name and the initial and everything. Yeah, I said the Oscar goes to Tom O'Neill. No, and and the Oscar goes to Tom G. O'Neill, and I see myself jumping out of my chair, and, going crazy, kissing my wife, and then running up on the stage and falling on the stage and chipping a tooth.
The good news is IMDb, allows for several aliases in there, so you can really put as many names as you want once you've got the Sprint commercial is just one of many appearances that you've been able to do as Tom G. O'Neill.
Well, anyway, so I hope people have that problem of if finding a third career and coming up with another name to call themselves. So on my passport it says. Tom Gundlefinger O'Neill, and then on the back it says AKA Christopher Gundlefinger, my original name. Mm-hmm. So, but then I found out, there's movie actors that change their name and then they're known as something else.
John Dusseldorf becomes John Denver.
John Denver, perfect example, and probably on his passport he was able to change it to John Denver. The IRS knows me as Tom G. O'Neill.
They probably know you actually is a 9-digit.
9-digit number, yes.
545.
Back to your earlier.
We're erasing the tape right now.
Back to your earlier comments about establishing, genuine engagement. That's probably not something that the IRS is terribly interested in.
No.
Hey, I'd like to ask you some questions about, where you started with technology as a photographer, where it's come to, and how that has enabled you to evolve yourself from, both as a photographer and artist, as well as someone who is interacting with other teams of people who might have to work with you on creative projects.
That's a great question. I actually, have regrets about not being technical enough when I started, and there was. In the early days of film, there was a big debate, how far do you go with the technology? Learning how to shoot film was technology, even though it had been around for a long time, exposure compensation. Ansel Adams had the zone system, which I studied for a while and all that. But originally when I got into it, right out of college, I was coming out of as a design major and a painting major, so I had pretty good design fundamentals down. But photography kind of came almost by accident. You know, a design teacher loaned me his camera, and I went out and started taking pictures, and I thought, wow, this is easy. Click, that's a painting.
Didn't
Click.
have to paint, yeah.
That's another painting. No turpentine, no smell of any of this stuff. I'm not making stretchers. Boom, boom. Ooh, I like this, you know. So, and that was, I borrowed a Nikon F, so there were no automatic features to it or anything like that. But I wish somebody, quite honestly, had said, look, okay, learn the basic principles of exposure compensation. And I didn't get that for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I made a lot of mistakes. And here I photographed right after I got out of school. So this is relatively one of the first things I had done in photography was the Monterey Pop Festival. Wow. During the day, when the light values were very nominal, very even, particularly in Monterey with the fog and all that, I got pretty good shots. And basically, you know, there was a little light meter within this camera I had, and I just got it right about the middle. I thought, okay, that's where it should be. Not understanding anything about, you know, minusing a couple of stops, mm-hmm. you know, or increasing. I didn't know anything about exposure compensation. And I kind of didn't want to learn and get bogged down by the technical aspect, because there was a belief that if you kind of hit this tipping point and kind of went over the edge of being much more aware and obsessed with the technical aspect, and you put all this thought process into, well, let's see, I can shoot at 5.6 and open up 2 stops, and then maybe I can minus the development and all this stuff. It misses that spontaneity, number one, of getting the shot. You know, while you've been thinking about it, you've already missed the shot. And just that thing that happens to you when you get in the zone and you're starting to get into the creative process, you know, sitting there making all kinds of calculations in your head, which were really new for me at the time, it was hard. I just wanted to go, does this feel good or does it not feel good? You know, in school you learn, does it work or does it not work? And as long as you start applying certain fundamentals that you've learned, you can get some pretty good shots. You know, you can kind of work the design into the shot. And I wanted to put my energy there. So to answer your question in a way, I did not embrace the technology. And that was a mistake. So when digital came along, by then I had figured out, you got to know something about this. But again, it's a balance beam you're walking on, and you've got to be able to know about certainly what the camera can do, and be able to take that technology and use it in an artistic way, and still keep your mind open, you know, and allow the artistic process, the creative process to come in, where you just let go and it all starts happening. You know, where you connect with this thing. It's called, you know, getting in the zone. Mm-hmm. Right. And every great artist, every artist that's never been discovered, but certainly all the great, Da Vinci and Michelangelo and Botticelli and all these guys from the Renaissance. I was just looking at them at the museum yesterday with my son. Anytime, you guys know what I'm talking about, anytime you totally give yourself, all of yourself, into this moment, where nothing else in the world matters, and you and this thing are totally connected by this beam of energy, that is an exciting experience, and that's when the magic happens. Every cell in your body is sitting there going, yeah, he's in it, man. He's cranking. Yeah, this is cool. And it takes a while to get there. But if you're thinking about, should I shoot at 5.6, or let's see, or should I have used Tri-X film or Plus X film? Maybe I've been... Atomic would have been better. The picture's gone.
Right.
You're gone. You're out of that space.
Would you say that it's fair to say that by knowing all those foundational rules, then it gave you the versatility to be able to break them and have that spontaneity, but also know that you had that foundation where you're still
within the foundation output. And I would break them, you know. But then I've always still gone back to some of the basics. You can't beat the law of thirds. It's just the way we have this predisposition of the way our neurotransmitters or whatever is going on in the brain and the way we see, and that there's this proportion of spatial relationships that have a rightness. It's the golden rule. It's the golden mean. The Greeks discovered it. It's been around for a long time. And those proportions, they're all based on math, and math is finite. And so, you start pushing it around, there's going to be a tilt. And that I find that, and if I start to, when I start to mess with that, those are just the basics. Now, as far as color, contrast, texture, I push it to all extremes. I don't feel like there's anything that's holding me back there, that I have to have certain guidelines. But if I have something where I'm just going, let's say like, a particular pattern that you see, and actually, I'm sure we've all done this. Sometimes you take a shot, your phone or your camera goes off, and it gets the ground in your foot, and you're moving, and so there's all this blurry. Sometimes an accident like that, where everything falls into the right spot. Some of those shots are beautiful.
Yeah.
95% of them I toss, but every once in a while I keep one and I go, wow, that's gorgeous.
How much of your career has been spent having to work with others in collaboration as an artistic team to produce some of this work, and where have you found yourself in sort of that leadership role to help guide them with some of these principles that you're sharing with us?
Where does Brian get questions like this? I've been interviewed a lot. Dude, you're just throwing them out there. It's like...
Yeah, he is, yeah. That's why he's Brian.
Hopefully that's a good
Brian,
thing.
you're cranking it. I got to tell Rob, you give him a raise, man. Jesus, guy's way too intelligent. Yeah. No, that's a great question. There are times where, I've worked on a number of projects that way. In fact, I had a partner when I was in LA, and there were 3-4 years where we did album covers together, and I gave him more of the design. It was really my group, and he came to me, and I brought him in. So in terms of the pecking order, I was still the guy, and most of the album covers were people that I had kind of met, and they were more or less my connections. I did feel more comfortable where I could put more time into the photography, and he could put more time into the design. And I liked this. He had a clean sense of design. So if you're compatible with somebody, this is obvious stuff. If you're compatible with somebody and you like the way they work, you like their design style, yeah, it's great. There is one designer in Carmel, where I live and work on different projects, and this guy is so good that whenever I get involved with him, I just know my work is going to look great. The output is always, this guy is so brilliant and has such a beautifully connected way of having that aha moment always pop up when he's finished. It's really a joy. There have been times where, and this happens a lot, you work with somebody, you turn in your photos, and you see it come out in a magazine or even in print or something, and I don't even want to show it to anybody. It's that bad. So there are times in a collaboration where if I don't have enough control and I really can't see anything, it can be disastrous and sad, because you try real hard with this picture. Now the other thing too I have to point out is that when you're working with somebody on the design, on the design side, but they're not there, you're not getting any feedback. They simply say, go out and get this photo, and they give you a few parameters, but not enough to where you really have to sit there and try and get in their head. You can't call them, you can't send them an email, and I got to kind of second guess them. Well, will they like this, or will they like that, or if I shoot this and there'll be a kind of a blank area, they could drop some type in over there. So now I find myself designing this thing before they've even had a chance to look at the photo. That's hard, because sometimes I'm totally off. And sometimes I'll shoot something and I'll go, oh yeah, I killed it, I crushed it, this is great, and they see it and they go, this isn't what I wanted at all.
So where does the interaction come in where there are leadership components where you may be acting in a directing capacity, or is it more in nature of the request of the work, that sort of?
Well, no. Again, it works both ways. But the one thing that happened when I did the album covers, I got to the point, because I did have a design background, I got to the point where I was able to convince the group. They said, look, I can design this for you. That was really, really something that helped. And one group in particular that I did 9 albums for, they totally trusted me. That was Steppenwolf. And I got in to the design aspect, and they gave me this beautiful blank slate, huge canvas. And they said, this is what we wanted to say, but, just let's see what you can do. One technique that a number of photographers that I worked with, they would just go out and shoot a bunch of pictures. They'd come back, they'd go to the studio, and I've done this a few times too. You bring your slide projector and you bring a blank album cover, and everybody smokes a tremendous amount of marijuana, and except I had to kind of be careful of that.
You didn't inhale?
Yeah, because I wanted no, actually, I really enjoyed it. I did inhale, but not very much, simply because I wanted to be able to use the slide projector and not make a fool of myself. Because that happened one time, and I got a slide stuck, and I couldn't get it out, and it was just an awful experience. I don't know what the fuck is happening. The slide got ruined. It was awful.
The smoke in the slide's probably
high, too. I tried to roll that little sucker. Ooh, wow, that's awful. Geez, all that emulsion and everything. Yeah, but anyway, we'd look at them, and I'd just sit there, and I could move the album cover back and forth as to see how the cropping would be. So that was one technique. The other was where you had a specific idea, and there were going to have to be a number of photographs used within the shot, like a collage, and I did several like that, or, it's much more involved. And I more or less, kind of took their lead and just said, okay, let's see, and then I said, I'm going to do this for you. It really helps when somebody's in control, and the more you can get as much control as possible. It's like with any project, within the arts or with even within a management team, something like that. The more control you can have, it's always going to be. All these things that are so standard, just standard beliefs that so many people have, that certainly works with me, and it worked with me in the past. But when I was able to actually, if I'm photographing you and I see some blank spaces in the back behind you, and I see a textured bush or tree over here, I know that I'm going to line you up so that the area behind you is much more devoid of texture, so I can drop song titles over this shoulder than that shoulder. And that really helps, knowing that I'm going to make that choice. Right. That was a huge asset. The fringe benefit from that is I made twice the money. But really what I liked was having the control. It was another way of going through that whole creative process. Mm-hmm. You take the shot, now you get to put it into a format or an environment to go with that format, and then lay it out, and it has to be perfect in doing the mechanicals and get it set for the printer, and you have to have a knowledge about printing. How this is where the technology, the more I learned, the more it really helped, and I was able to use it in an artistic way. Perfect example. In offset printing, like everything was in those days, in order to get a real rich black background, and sometimes I would frame a photograph with black, I'd put a 30% layer of blue ink underneath that, and that in red would change it. You couldn't do it with any other color, but at 30% blue, the printer would lay that on first, and then on top of that, the black. That black would just be so rich and deep. And that was a trick I learned from a guy, who taught me a lot about printing. So I would be able to, I'd call the colors out. I could control so much of the look of the album by ways that a lot of people didn't even understand, because I understood the printing process. Yeah. And I'd be down there on the press talking to the guys loading up the ink fountains and telling what I wanted and everything. So I got into it in that respect. It was a long ways from going click. Putting film in the camera and going, okay, I think I'll take that,
What's one of the universal truths you think anyone who works with technology needs to know when they're leading other teams that have to collaborate effectively? Do you have an insight that you
Yeah. Well, I don't care what you're doing. If you don't create from the heart, you're going to start to stumble. But when people see that the passion is there, they get behind that. I have one son who's a filmmaker. He's a director of basically mostly TV commercials. And he'll put a lot of people on the set. And he does some very big productions. But they get right away from the beginning, in the first meeting, that they have these pre-con meetings where they could go on for 2 or 3 weeks, where he meets with art directors and set designers, all this stuff. And when you see that it comes, and I tell him, I said, corazón, as long as you create from the heart, your hands will follow. Now I have another son who's, he's a software engineer. And he is all heart. He is passion, and all he does is put zeros and ones together. And he writes mostly now in JavaScript, but he writes in other languages as well. But he writes with passion, and I would say that's the key thing. It might sound cornball. Be passionate. It has to come from the heart. You got to love what you do. What are you, a chef? No, I'm a software engineer. I'm creating an app. What do you mean? No, no, but it's. Sorry, I get carried away.
You're fine.
But it's no different, and I think that's the beauty. I mean, my son explained to me last night at dinner about how he works. He's a web developer right now, and they build these very high-end websites for universities, and he just did one for Jeff Bezos for the Blue Origin. Pretty sophisticated website, and he worked with a few other engineers and all that. But I said, well, how do you even begin this? He says, well, it's atomic design. Atomic design? What the heck is that? And atomic design is a way in which they start on the, it's a very organic process, and they start the design, they break everything down even to the molecular level. And it's not quantum physics or anything, but it is structured in a way that it is basically like atomic and subatomic infrastructure. And they, he has, everything on a molecular design, and they get into the atoms, and he was showing me how each stage of where they're going. I was blown away. The structural thing of how they start from here, and they keep making these steps. Where, the way I was, you take a napkin and you get a ballpoint pen and you start drawing on it, and you get another napkin and you draw on that, and then you put the two together and you say, okay, that's what we're going to do. And it ain't like that anymore. It's kind of cool. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I just found out about atomic design. I mean, have you heard of that? Where you start on the molecular level and everything?
I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something fairly new. So yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty new. It's got to be pretty new.
Yeah, past couple years.
But I mean, that's fantastic. But even that is done with heart. That's done with passion. And passion is nothing more than you believe in this so much, and you are so connected with it that it's part of you. That's that thing about the zone, and it can be selling products, in the insurance world or in the wholesale world or reinsurance. I mean, how do you get excited about reinsurance?
I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. But you know what? I mean, even when I started working with you guys 15 years ago, and I started to tell people, I said, God, I met this great group of people. I'm working with this great corporate group. What is it? It's the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers. They looked at me like, what the hell are you talking about? That's got to be real. You mean insurance people? Oh, that's real exciting. Whoopee. I'd love to wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to work with a bunch of insurance guys. I'll get my gray suit out and go watch the paint dry. Yeah, because that was the perception.
Yeah.
It's just the opposite. This is one of the best group of people I've ever met.
So I'm going to ask you a question a little bit easier probably than what Brian's been throwing at you. Do you have any habits that you've developed that you think kind of help you get through your days, or that have been beneficial with you working at all?
Well, I have to say that the therapy I get is when I can let go and start looking for art. And this sounds like, does this guy ever give it up, you know? But there's something about the creative process, whether I'm repairing something in the house and I've got to go down and figure out how to make it. I've got some pretty cool tools. I don't have a shop, I wish I did, but I've got enough tools around, you know, in the garage and stuff like that, and with a good vise and, you know, a grinder and impact driver and all these cool things you can get at Home Depot and everything. you can start making pretty cool stuff. So there's a creative aspect there. I'd rather fix something that needs repair in the house than call somebody. Because, number one, I like the satisfaction that I was able to figure this out. And it's the process. And, you know, there's that saying, is it the destination or is it the journey? I actually really like the journey.
Yeah.
You know, and so I create my own journeys sometimes. And when I went to that museum, those several museums yesterday with Casey, I was shooting art within art. I mean, some of the things were so visually stunning that I started pulling other very visual stunning images within that people didn't even notice. You know, so I mean, here's this giant, let's say a giant painting, and then I started photographing just a section of that, and then finding another world of art, and then walking around within the architecture and looking up at the ceilings and look at the superstructure, and then just by holding the camera a certain way, you get part of different planes, and then maybe some molding, and then different tonal changes within the walls, and then by the way it's cropped, all of a sudden, wow, that's pretty cool. Well, you know, I do this with my friends. We call it pulling art out of nothing. And I do that for my own. If I can have the time to do that, I will feel better within my whole body. And now I don't get a chance to do that much, and I have to go to that place. Unfortunately, you know, when you're so bogged down with stuff that happens during the day, you know, that you have to do, you can't see that stuff. I can drive by something or look at something and go, I don't know what I saw the other day in that, but I don't see anything now. Because I've got emails to answer, just like we all get caught up with this stuff that we got to do, and it bogs us down. So when you can free yourself of that and go into something where now you've got these little journeys that you can go through and go through that excitement of finishing the journey or taking on the journey and reaching your destination, that's healthy, and I like to do that. And I also never stop walking or moving, so I get plenty of exercise.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then one other question I have, is there a book that you gift to people, or a book that's had a big impact on you, or a piece of media or anything like that?
I hear a lot of interviews on NPR, and there are some fascinating people that sometimes I find that they talk better than they write. Because I go and buy the book, I go, this isn't exactly what it sounded like when he was talking to Terry Gross. But there's some guys that let's see. Brian DeGrasse, no, that's it. Who's the guy the one who knows everything about
Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
I
Star
like the way
talk. Maybe Brian's got to do that star talk.
Star talk.
Yeah.
I find his show a little bit, a little bit cheesy at times, and a little bit too scripted. But I like the way he describes things in very basic terms, and I do learn from him. But I read several books. One is on literally about speaking and connecting with people. There's some great books on, and I can't really quote anybody right now, but it's something I copy a lot of phrases out of it. But really, what helps me more than anything is I listen a lot to NPR, and I listen to some very bright people talk, and I love the use of really well composed metaphors, and I write metaphors down all the way. And I hear them many more times than when I see them in print. But there was one I just heard the other day, and oh my God, it floored me. And Terry Gross, I'm a big fan of hers. I mean, we all are. But she said something, years ago in the interview. She says, well, it seems like that has some nefarious underpinnings. And I went, nefarious underpinnings? Wow. That's almost a song. Yeah, it has a cadence to it, nefarious underpinning. I've actually written her about this. I gave her my rock and roll book, and I put that in there. I said, you're the only person in the world, I think, that has ever put those two words together, and it sure is cool. But I've tried to use that. It's very difficult. It's difficult to find some of these metaphors to drop into in a very cool way in a sentence where you really want to explain what you're feeling, and at the same time somebody goes, "Whoa." I don't do it for that reason, but but it's fun. It's flowery and it's fun, and so I get a lot out of that. But I'd say there was a book that I like to recommend to people, only because there's still a tremendous interest within the music, and it's about Jimi Hendrix. And there's a book called Room Full of Mirrors, and it's about his life. It's a biography of his life, and it is so well done. And if you want to look into the world of somebody, into the life of somebody that is so immensely popular and famous, and he's been dead for 47 years, something like that. Unfortunately, he only had 3 years of success. He had a terrible, miserable, awful upbringing. But the book is very well written, and it really channels, it tracks his life right up to the end and from the very beginning. And I like to tell people that are interested in music, read this book. It'll really make you realize, wow, look what some people do to really, what they got to do to go through to make it. But I hear books like *Sapiens*. I've been wanting to read that. I hear that's a great read. And my son gave me *The Fabric of the Universe* by Brian Greene, and I got 3 pages into that, and I got a headache. I wanted to understand it so much because I listened to him on the radio, but there's some books I love. There's some great books, but I'm sounding like somebody that sits over in the White House, says a lot of words and says nothing. I'm sorry, everybody. I don't know what these guys think.
Hey, nefarious underpinnings. It's probably got a much broader usage at this point.
I saw something in the New Yorker the other day at a friend's house. I probably didn't write it down here. It was something like, it was a drawing, and there was a woman, and she had her child, and there was another person that had a dog, and the dog was looking at the kid, and the woman said, "Does your dog bite?" And the caption was, "That's not in his repository of advances." I said, okay, I gotta find a way to use it. I'm gonna use that, dude. Have you ever said, well, it's not my repository of comments, but I'm fascinated by words and how people put them together. But I'll tell you, the things that the one thing, that phrase I said a little while ago, that has resonated with me in such a big way. Nobody cares how much you know until you know how much they care. I would say that's one of the number one phrases that just has really meant a lot to me, and I live by that. When you send it out to the universe, it will answer. Mm-hmm. My sister taught me that one, and the one I've taught both kids. An artist in Mexico told me this years ago. When you create from the heart, your hands will follow. And I live by those. So it's not really necessarily getting them from books. Mm-hmm. It's just getting them either on the radio or if somebody tells me. The one I got from, I learned about the Teddy Roosevelt quote, nobody cares how much you know. I got that from 2 brothers that their father had just passed away, and he was this incredible guy, and he was this amazing salesman. He was a super salesman. And that's what he taught his sons. Mm-hmm. That was his mantra. He said, the way you connect with people. And I heard that, and I just said, say it again. Now again. Then I had to write it down. Then I had to look at it 5 times so I could get it right. I just remember there is one from a book. It was in school. George Bernard Shaw. It was a short play called Mrs. Warren's Profession. And there's a line in there. I think I was 19 years old when I read this. This had a profound effect. I don't tell anybody to read this short play, but I tell them about the line. And there's a line in there that says you create your own circumstances. And that came very early on. I would say that's one of the most powerful printed lines that I'd ever read that had a very immediate and a very, very long, profound effect on me. I still live by that. You create your own, which is the same thing as when you send it out the universe that will answer. I mean, I'm in this situation now where I've got a strong chance to be in some commercials. People listen, commercials? Who wants to be in a commercial? Well, national commercials. And it's the journey.
Yeah.
The destination, yeah, it aired all over the place. Sure, fine. It was the process that's where the fun is. I want to do this. You know, I've been I photographed TV sets and movie sets when I was in LA for years. I was always comfortable. Now I'm on the other side of the camera. My son taught me how to find that. Being a director taught me how to find that comfort zone. I really like it. I started thinking about what happened to me in September. I started thinking about that 2 years ago. I started creating the circumstance for that. I started sending it out. And it happened. And it happened much bigger than I thought it would. So, I mean, this little 5-second moment that I was on television all over the country for about 3 or 4 weeks, has had a profound effect on my life. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
very crazy.
And I've had this career as a photographer, where I actually, I mean, some people know me, and I've got a name out there, and it's floating around. You can see my stuff. But now, I mean, when people see me, they're in Carmel or Pebble Beach or something like that, they go, hey, Dancing Man, how you doing? There's our rock star.
So we'll title this podcast, Dancing Man.
Yeah, Dancing Man. Hey, how you doing? Hey, don't forget the little people. Remember us? Somebody's sitting there yelling at me from the front door of their their $5 million mansion. Don't forget the little people. Yeah, sure, as I go back to my trailer. Yeah, I won't forget the little rich millionaire people that I know. Yeah, no, it's just they're crazy about it, So I mean, people come up all the time now that they're clients and some are friends, and they make a big deal about it. I want to say, 5 seconds I was on television. This happens all the time, but that guy that they saw, they knew, and I've tried to think about that. What is it when you know somebody that does something on a national level, or it gets a lot of exposure?
Yeah.
It's funny, I mean, that stuff fascinates me.
It's very crazy when I saw it, because I didn't happen to catch it when it aired, but so I went back to YouTube to find it, and I'm like, wait, there's Tom. He's right there. It's like, it's like 5 seconds. You're just like dancing around, and it's like, wait,
it's such a shock. Nobody.
That was my wife too. She's like, wait, that is him right there. Yeah.
And people, they started calling me, and I got emails and texts like, dude, did I just see you in a Sprint commercial? And I've been in a few more, but they weren't as prevalent. They weren't as you just didn't see them that much. And I'd get texts here and there, maybe just a handful. This was crazy. So, and I've been interviewed a number of times on the radio and NPR and all that, and the same thing. Hey, I heard you on the radio. People here in D.C. heard me, when I did the show in L.A. At their studios in Culver City, and that was fun. But it was fun.
It was the journey, right?
It was the journey.
It was the journey.
Yeah.
Can we finish with? I just want to ask, favorite rock and roll album cover that you ever got to do photography for? What is it?
The most famous, the one that certainly is way up there in terms of the accolades is that Deja Vu album cover for Crosby, Stills and Nash, and I am proud of that. But I'd say, quite honestly, my favorite is an album called Steppenwolf 7. And it was where I was really able to do my thing as an artist. They gave me such a free rein. And I had some elements they wanted, that one of the guys in the band who was very creative, he wanted me to work with. But I created this thing, and that has also been singled out in different album cover books and things like that. It's the one with the two big skulls that were and there's a sunset behind it, and the band's kind of in the lower third of the album, and they're looking very macho, and I shot it in infrared film, so the color balance is way off. And then in these radiant lines going out from the center of the album, it says Steppenwolf 7. And then you look at the backside, and it's a shot that I took of John Kay, who I'm going to see in a few days in Montreal. And I had gotten down in his swimming pool in Laurel Canyon, and then he stood on the edge, and I shot up with a 17 millimeter wide angle lens. So he looks like he's the Eiffel Tower. He looks like this huge, goes on forever. And underneath that, in a very light texture, is the yellow plate. In other words, the front cover, but only the yellow. And and this image is sitting on that. And then there's a group shot that I took of the band in front of the Royal Albert Hall, posing for a whole group of paparazzi photographs. So I had shot from the side, and I put that shot very small at the foot of this big, supersized John Kay, the leader of the band. And then I took another shot of one of the guys in the band that was in this group shot. Well, I took a shot of him leaning up against a huge stone at Stonehenge when they played in Bath, England, at a big festival there. And we stopped at Stonehenge, and so he was taking a picture of his wife. So I took a picture. And I just went around looking at proof sheets, and I started cutting them out. But I didn't clip them out like a collage. I did it all photomechanically. So anyway, he's leaning up against this rock, which became the other leg of John Kay, shooting the band on the opposite leg. And then I took a brick road that I'd gotten in Sofia, Bulgaria, and I put that in. Anyway, I'm trying to say I made this just crazy collage, but it all worked. It wasn't tilt or anything like that. It all was very seamless the way it was just meant to be. That was a lot of fun, and that journey was fantastic. And when I look at that, I'm quite proud. And it was done all analog. Today you can do this in layers.
Sure. I
did it with film layers. I worked in big sheets of it's called line film or Kodalith film. There's no gray tones or anything like that. It's either solid black or the film was clear. And the neat thing about it was orthochromatic, so you could work on it. You could do things with it underneath a safe light. And when you processed it, and you could look at it to see when it was ready. And it was all trait development. But they were like photographs, only that it was on film. But no middle grays. So it was very graphic. And I would make prints off of those, and then I'd paint on them, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. But this is way before anything like Photoshop or working with computers. Something digital. You know what digital meant? Digits, fingers, or a number.
Yeah.
But digital meant you had dexterity in your fingers. So it was just all analog, and I'm very proud of that. So yeah. Steppenwolf 7. Check that out, ladies and gentlemen, on Amazon. You can get it for about, or eBay, $35 an album. It was good, you guys.
Yeah, perfect. Do you, where can people find you, Tom? They're looking for you.
Yeah, the website is tgophoto.com. My initials, tgophoto.com. And if you go to the website and you see the rock and roll book, you can buy that for $29.95 plus a little bit of money for shipping, and we'll send it anywhere. It's called Gundelfinger, Memoirs of a Rock and Roll Photographer from Deja Vu, from Monterey Pop to Deja Vu and beyond. It's a cool book. You'll dig it. Why do I look over there?
Well, there is an object over there.
Well,
so
I think it looks like a camera. I'm talking to everybody, and I know there's no camera, but you look like a camera too. Yeah.
Well, this is awesome. Thanks.
Really, it's okay.
Thanks.
Oh, I love this. You guys, you do a great show. Bravo.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.